One of our biggest jobs is to guide the consumer. And consumers forget sometimes that that's what we actually do. It's not just putting a sign in the yard and, hey, you sold my house. That's easy, Wade. I'm not going to pay you commissions. It's all the stuff you do from that, through the process, through the closing, that are super important to success.
Hi, I'm Wade Hansen. I've been selling luxury real estate in Minnesota and Wisconsin for over 23 years. My entire career has been spent protecting my clients from misinformation and unethical practices by those not looking out for their best interests. This podcast will give you the raw truth about everything real estate so you can make solid, informed decisions about the biggest investment of your lifetime. This is the Raw Real Estate Podcast. Ryan, thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Wade.
Appreciate you taking the time. So for those of you that don't know Ryan runs the largest real estate team, I believe, in the country.
It is one of the largest. Yeah, okay. One of the largest.
Okay, I know you're the largest in the state by far.
Yeah.
No matter what the guy on the billboard says, you're the largest team. I know that, and you have been year in and year out. I think you did like almost 2,500 transactions last year.
Yeah, busy year.
Yeah.
Busy.
How many agents are on your team?
There's about 185.
I don't know how you do it. We were just talking before the podcast. You don't have any kids, but it sounds like you have 185 kids. That's a lot.
It is a full-time job, labor of love.
Yeah.
A labor of love, however. But no, I'm happy to be here with you. Happy to be joining you. I've always loved working with you, respected your work, the work you do, and excited to be here.
Appreciate that. So I really want to dive in, and I want this to be a conversation, just two guys talking real estate. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows you know your shit. I know my shit.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want this to be two guys talking about what we know.
Yeah.
So I think right now, the state of the real estate market, in my opinion, Ryan, I think from a realtor's perspective, I think real estate is in a bad spot. That's my opinion. I think we've got too many agents that are just not educated, that are running around, they're loose, there's no training, there's no education, and I think our profession is one of the lowest on the totem pole of professionalism. That's my opinion, okay? Two, I think there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace with the consumer right now. I think with everything that's happened, as we sit here today, the Fed raised rates another 0.5 point yesterday, and it's chaos. COVID is just... The last 2 years, I could hardly come up for air, and same with you, I'm sure.
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit first about the consumer's perspective.
Yeah.
What do you think we're in a bubble? Do you think this is going to pop?
I think, from being in the business now since 2003, I did see and feel when the bubble popped before, and I worked with a lot of investors when I started in the business, and there were so many investors buying property with zero down, minimal down. And it was a different time, different lending guidelines, appraisals non-existent back then. So I think there's a lot of fundamentals that are different right now than back then. And so I think what we're seeing is, the last 10, 15 years, a lack of construction, new construction being built, really affecting supply. I think the last few years, obviously low rates, a lot of buyers having rented for so long, waiting to purchase, and finally deciding to purchase, with rents also rising, causing buyers to say, my gosh, my rent's getting so expensive, maybe I should buy. So I still see demand being strong, and I think the Twin Cities overall, with just a strong labor market, as well as a lot of the sort of projections, population increase projections, I can think of some friends of mine from college, from New York, from a friend from California who moved here recently, different people moving to the Twin Cities for a variety of different reasons. I think all of this is going to cause demand to remain strong. Now, will prices continue to go up at the rate they have? In my opinion, no. I just don't think it can. People can't afford it. And the rising rates right now are causing a little bit of a pullback. But I think long term, I think our market is in a much healthier spot than 10, 12 years ago, when it was a little bit of the Wild West and the bubble was bursting. And so I am as a kind of a small real estate investor, that's how I got in the business. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, and I think I'm kind of a buy and hold person, and I think that the future is still bright. Though the last few years have been, like you said, a little bit crazy, to say the least.
Are you buying and holding in this market?
Yeah, it's interesting. I started buying in like 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so I saw a lot of the investment properties that I bought drop significantly in value. Yeah, and then come back up and now increase. And so we've kind of held on to everything. I haven't bought a lot recently, mostly just because I manage these properties and it's enough. But I have been, very pleasantly surprised seeing how much things have come back and then some. And really, arguably, I bought at probably the worst time a person could have bought, and a lot. I ended up buying a lot of different rentals because you could, again, minimal down, zero down, that type of thing. So anyway, that's at least what I'm seeing kind of from the consumer's perspective.
Yeah. I agree, and I'm hearing a lot of that. I'm just having a hard time. I've also been through the recession. I've been doing this 23 years. So I'm having a hard time coming to grips with the fact that we're going to be okay. To be honest, it seems so chaotic, and it has that kind of taste and feel of 05, right?
Right.
Where everybody's bidding on houses, and granted, I understand it's a supply and demand issue, but our interest rates have basically doubled since the first of the year.
Yep.
I mean, there's threats of them going into the mid sixes, maybe as high as 7 by end of year. Who knows? So, I mean, from my perspective, I think things will hit, I don't want to say a wall, but I think they'll stop around 4th of July this year, where stop's the wrong word. I think there's going to be some hesitation after the 4th of July, and people are going to have to take some time to accept the new reality of this is where rates are. If I'm going to be a buyer in this market, I'm just going to have to swallow this, move forward, and buy. But I think there's going to be some pullback, only because it's gone so fast, and so it's just been such a rapid increase. And I think anytime something changes that quickly, it just creates that level of fear that people are going to have to get past. So I hope it's a supply and demand issue, and I hope we're not in a bubble. But nobody saw the bottom until we were 2 years past it, and nobody saw the peak until we were 2 years past it. So I think if you and I could predict, we wouldn't be sitting at this table, right?
You're right. Well, and I think those are all really good points. You and I have both seen this market has brought things that I thought I would never see. People buying sight unseen, people not doing home inspections or making contingent on home inspections, people not doing well in septic inspections, people doing all types of unique things with offers. And I get it. It's frustrating to keep losing, and you want to keep buying. And so it will be interesting to see from a rental perspective what happens with rents as well. I have a couple friends who, one who owns a property management company, and just seeing what happens there, the renting versus buying, and seeing how that affects the consumer and what they decide to do.
Yeah, and I think wages will have to keep up with rising rental rates and rising interest rates and just housing affordability.
Right.
So I don't know that that's keeping pace right now. So that's where I'm there's some moving parts in there that have me a little concerned about just the future of real estate. And I don't have the rose-colored glasses that I think a lot of people do. Right. You and I have enough gray hairs to know there's definitely some possible negative outcomes that could happen. So
you're exactly right.
I hope I'm wrong. So you talked a little bit about some of the things that are happening in this market, and unfortunately, if you want to be a buyer in this market, you've got to do, I say, stupid things, right? And there's some things that you have to do in order to buy a home if you have to have a home in this market. I always tell people, if you don't have to have a home, now is probably not the best time to make that move, right? But if you're relocating here, you have to have a home. I just had some people from California. They bought it through FaceTime, sight unseen, no inspections. They needed a house, right? They need to get their kids in here enrolled in school. And in order to do that, you've got to check some boxes you normally wouldn't check.
Right.
What's your take on that? How do you think, A, do you think it's going to last? And B, do you think we're going to get ourselves into some trouble here as realtors?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to last. I think the rising rates are going to cause people to just say, wow, this has affected my payment. Some people may try different loan products. They may try the 7 or 10-year ARM, something like that to get a more reasonable rate. But I think it's going to cause people to pull back. And we're starting to see it in a small way on some of those offers where maybe there is a home inspection contingency. Maybe it is contingent on the successful closing of their property. Maybe it is contingent on them selling their home. Things that are a little more reasonable in a normal market or expected. that are happening, or that, in my opinion, will be happening more so. And I think, just one comment, Wade, that you had mentioned too, from a realtor perspective. I think right now there's more agents than there's ever been in the industry. And to your point, it takes 3 weeks of school to pass 2 tests, and really anybody can become an agent. And I think there's so many different brokerage options out there that it's very easy for someone to just be licensed. But there's a responsibility that we have to the consumer. And I think from a professionalism standpoint, but also from a knowledge and an ethics standpoint, when we're representing people buying and selling homes, and there are no inspections, there's no well and septic, there's all these different things, you need someone like a Wade Hansen that knows the business, that has seen the ups and downs, the pitfalls, and can actually guide you through the transaction. And so I do think we're going to see people exit the industry because it's a tough job. It's not easy. I mean, it's not easy, and I think people get into it thinking that, hey, it is going to be easy. But your point's a really just a super valid one. I mean, for me, it hits home, because I just think one of our biggest jobs is to guide the consumer. And consumers forget sometimes that that's what we actually do. It's not just putting a sign in the yard and, hey, you sold my house. That's easy, Wade. I'm not going to pay you commissions. It's all the stuff you do from that, through the process, through the closing, that are super important to success.
Yeah, I always say it's a super emotional time and transaction for somebody, probably the most emotional business transaction they'll make in their lifetime. And experienced agents like you and I can really help hold their hand, table those emotions, and guide them through the process with some logic, right?
Right.
I mean, we've got to have some logic, and it's just right now there's a lot of just bad decisions being made because of high emotions. And I think, to your point, when there's 100 agents for every one house that's for sale, or whatever the number is, that it's probably the wrong statistic. You've got people that are fighting to put food on the table and earn a commission check, and they'll do just about anything they can to do that.
Right.
So,
right.
I think you're right. I think that people don't realize how hard it is, and that we do have a fiduciary to our clients to make sure that we hold their hand through this process. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So, as you've been in this business, this is a good segue into, I want to talk a little bit about where I think the industry is, and I'd like your opinion as to where you think it'll go. I think we're in a bad place, kind of like you touched on. I just think, unfortunately, the last 2 years has caused a lot of people to lose jobs, and they see selling Sunset $1 million listing, and real estate's this cool, sexy place. You can go make millions of dollars. I got to go to 3 weeks of school, and I can just get it done. So we're seeing all these people pour into the real estate industry, and I think the professionalism has gone way, way down. In your career, what has been maybe the one thing that you have seen change the most? That 'cause I always say this. The point I'm trying to make: the licensing hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So the same 3 weeks of real estate school.
Yeah.
What has changed the most that, and over the last 23 years, that maybe we need to change as from the education perspective?
Yeah, from an education perspective, perhaps it's increasing the bar, I think, to one, get licensed, but also just from a yearly standpoint on what we're required to do. My father-in-law, for example, is a retired doctor. Mm-hmm. And obviously, I look at what he was required to do to keep actively practicing medicine. Now, I'm not saying that we are of equal importance to doctors, but it's so important what consumers are going through, and they need a pro. And if they don't have someone that has experience, or at least has a mentor or someone that can help guide them, there can be a lot of destructive things that happen. And I work sort of as the sales manager and broker with our team. I see all the problems. Mm-hmm. So all of the negative things that happen from not doing home inspections, from not all of the crazy things that are happening in the market, I can see the problems that happen. And so if you don't have a trusted pro that can guide you through that and really give you good advice, it just makes a situation even worse. And so I think just a requirement, a simple requirement, whether it's more CE, whether a continuing education, whether it's requiring it in person, not making it so easy to do this job. And I think that's it. I mean, we can do CE online. Really, there isn't a lot that we have to do annually to stay current.
Yeah. Do you ever just look in the mirror sometimes, or just get off the phone with somebody and I just can't believe that just happened, or I just can't believe this agent is doing that, or not necessarily one of your agents, just
no.
I mean, every day I'm just shaking my head. I'm like, this is really happening right now, and the consumer's not aware of it, right? Do you have any?
Well, we just this week we had a transaction with an agent who I think, again, I'm maybe more so giving people humanity the benefit of the doubt. This gentleman, I think he meant well, but didn't know how to use our forms system that we all have access to, that buyers and sellers sign. Didn't know, for the earnest money, he sent over pictures, one picture of 10 $100 bills for proof of funds.
Right.
And there was a variety of things. And again, our agent that was working with them, they had a nice enough conversation, and I think he meant well, but he clearly was not representing his client well, and understanding the transaction, the process, and the system. And that buyer, is that buyer aware in those cases? And that's where I think there is a certain negligence, and there is a certain responsibility that we all have. And some people take it seriously, some not as much, but people can get hurt.
Yeah. What do you wish? You bring in a lot of agents. Obviously, you have to bring on new agents to maintain the count that you have. What do you tell a new agent? Like, this is something you need to know about this business before you get into this business. What do you wish that they would know? That kind of wet behind the ears kid ready to get licensed.
Yeah, there's got to be a fire in their belly. There's got to be something that gets them out of bed. A strong enough why that causes them to take action. And I think a lot of people, again, they may see the TV shows, they may see different things, and the business looks fun, interesting, sexy. I love houses, all these different things, but they don't understand that, one, it's a hard business. Two, it requires a lot of work. Three, it is a job. Yeah. So you have to put in a solid, daily, consistent, weekly effort. And it's not easy. Yeah. And I think a lot of times people get into the industry and their intentions are good, but they don't understand that it is a full-time job and then some. Yeah. And that is, it's hard for people to understand the independence of this job kills a lot of agents. Yeah. Even with a team like ours, we do a lot of stuff. There's a lot of structure, but there's still independence. Yeah. And if the agent doesn't have fire in their belly, it's very hard to make it in this job. Yeah,
it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of commitment,
right?
A lot of swings and misses, a thick skin, right?
Yeah,
and the ability to deal with a lot of rejection,
right?
I think that's something that a lot of these, especially these younger kids right now, because everybody got a trophy growing up nowadays, right?
Well,
so they're not used to getting rejected.
It's a good point. Wait, I remember the first listing that I got. I was into the business just briefly, and it was a friend of mine, and for whatever reason, I don't even remember right now, but his wife, I ended up getting fired. So it was about 45 days into the listing. It was a slower market, but and your point's a valid one. There's a lot of no's. There's a lot of, hey, we chose somebody else, and just resilience. How do you battle back? Or do you just put your head in the ground and say, this is terrible, life's hard, that type of thing. It's easy to feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, I think the next generation coming into this business, they don't have that resilience. They don't have that, they're used to, getting everything they want, instant gratification, right? Getting the trophy for showing up to the race, all that stuff. So it's going to be interesting. I'm kind of dating myself now, but that's going to be interesting.
Right.
What do you think, kind of along those lines? And you've kind of touched on a little bit. Is there one specific thing that just separates a good agent from just that exceptional, really just great agent?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times having just a really solid work ethic is one of the first things that I'll look for. Someone that is or has put in time, can just show up, make that effort. Simple things. Every person I've met that's grown up on a farm that gets into this business, almost to the person I can think of over the last 20 years, does extremely well because they're making a very solid day-to-day effort. I mean, I think that everybody has the ability to do that piece. The other piece is kind of who is the person. what is their knowledge level? What is their ability to learn? What is their personality? This is such a human business that you have to be able to work with people. And some people, again, I found they can be super strong in the work ethic area, and maybe they're a little less strong in the human side, and still do reasonably well. But when people have both variables, the propensity to just shine is there.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to know. It's hard to know, but trying to determine, what is their why? Do they need to make money?
Yeah.
Do they need to provide?
Yeah.
Or is this, I just want to get into it. I love real estate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love helping people, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I've always said there's 2 or 3 ways to really be successful in this business, in my opinion. One, like me, you're kind of that craftsman, right? You're that person that just, you're on your own. You're just a really solid agent. You're pounding out the transactions, and you're just really good at what you do, right?
Sure.
2, you're a team leader like yourself, and you have a success based on those around you and those underneath you.
Yeah.
And 3, you're on a team. I think those are really your 3 options in this business. And I think, being a newbie trying to come in and be that craftsman is tough. Being a newbie trying to come in and run a team is tough.
Yeah.
So being a newbie, really, your best option, in my opinion, is coming in and being a part of a team like what you created.
Yeah.
And I've always been impressed with the level of professionalism your agents have. A lot of teams that I work with, it's just a revolving door, and there's the education and the experience that I have with these agents is so poor, Ryan.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? How do you create that space for people?
Yeah, to me, it is important. My biggest task every day that I focus on is kind of pouring into those agents that work with me to help them learn the business, to help them learn what is the right thing to do in transactions and situations. And, certainly we've lost people over the years that have gotten out of the business or whatever. But I think it's easy to just get licensed, and then you're not doing a lot to try to pour back into your people. And for me, I just feel that if I'm going to do this job well, I have to give 120% to those folks to help them learn the business, to help them best represent consumers. And I think it's easy to just find a lot of people and be focused on the dollar. And as a result, the human is kind of the cog in the wheel. You just focus as the human, as the cog in the wheel, and there's always someone new, and you find more young people. And the Twin Cities is small. I mean, the market is small, and that kind of model, I think, long term is just business-wise not good. On a human side, just not treating people well. I mean, we've had some people join who just, I think, like the fact that we're focusing on them, and we're not going out trying to find everyone else and say, hey, we're the best, and you got to come work with us. And people are going to work where they want to work. Right. You just got to, who's ever with your team right now, focus on them. Yeah. I know it's super simple, but I think that, and I appreciate the compliment, because I think we do try to just do the right thing, treat our fellow agents well in the market. Because again, we may work on a deal right now and we don't win, our buyer doesn't win on your listing, but we could be working together next week. And if I have a good relationship with Wade Hansen, that helps. Yeah. It helps everybody instead of being adversarial. And so anyway, that's a little bit along those lines.
Yeah, I think it's, so many agents like myself will go off and think, they see the dollar signs and they just start bringing on additional agents to create this big giant team, and they keep just listing and selling on their own, and that's really what they're doing. Yet they've got people under them, but they're not managing them and doing what they should. So I think it takes a special person like yourself, and I'm not one of those people. I could never do what you do, to be able to do what you do and focus on those professionals and making sure that you're kind of always judged by your worst player, right? And making sure that your worst player is a good player. So. Yeah,
well, no, I appreciate it. It's hard to chase 2 rabbits. I've always said it's hard to do, and I think it's just determining. Like you said, if you want to be the craftsman, go for it. If you want to be a team leader, bigger is not better, and it's one thing to recruit; it's another thing to retain. You may get them to the team. That's where the job begins. That's where the real work starts. So
how do you think our role as real estate professionals is going to change? everybody's, as we started to progress through COVID, when it initially hit, it was like, we're going to become a thing of the past. They're going to click and buy a house and put it in their shopping cart and buy it online. And Amazon's coming into the business, and Zillow's doing guarantees, and the guy in the billboard's buying you out, and all these things, right? So how is our role not only evolved, but how do you think it will continue to change in the future of real estate?
I think our role will become even more important for consumers as time goes along.
I agree.
When the market is really good like this, naturally people value agents less.
Yeah.
I remember I had a gentleman that worked with me on the team years ago that owned a discount realty company. And he ended up selling this brokerage back in the day. And I asked him, I said, well, this was like 2000, when the market was really good. The market was hot. He bought this company. And I said, well, why did you end up selling that discount brokerage? And he just said, you know what, Ryan, it was everybody wanted to pay me 4% or 3.5%, but they wanted 6% service or 7% service. And I think the moral of that story, what I've learned is that in good markets, it's easy to discount and kind of race to the bottom. But I think as things become a little more challenging, which as you referenced, they are, the rates rising, things, you need a craftsman, you need a pro in the transaction. And that, I think, is going to continue to grow over time. Where agents are going to say, wow, I really need a Wade Hansen type of agent to do this. Yeah. I can't just go online. Sure, I could, but I don't know. To me, I think it does a huge disservice to you as a consumer to not use a top real estate professional.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I would basically repeat the same thing you just said. I think that our role is going to become even a stronger role in the real estate transaction as we evolve out of this whole pandemic and into more of a balanced, normal market, right? I think you're right. There was a race to the bottom over the last 2 years, and I think we've kind of found that, honestly.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I hope I'm right. So as I wrap things up, maybe you've watched my podcast, maybe you haven't, but I always like to end with one simple kind of nugget from my guests, and that is, what do you think it has attributed to your success? If you were to give anybody a piece of advice or a bit of success advice, what would that be? What does it take to be a Ryan O'Neill?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. Putting me on the spot. I think trying to be kind. Be kind. Try to look at it from other people's perspective, and sometimes slowing down, listening, and trying to do the right thing, the kind thing, can be hard. But I think long term, it's, for me, the job is a lot about building goodwill, because I know that, our agents are going to work with you on transactions, and it doesn't make sense to me to be adversarial, to be difficult. I don't know. For me, I'm very similar. My dad is no longer living, but I think my dad really operated the same way. It's I want to treat people well, and that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And I think in some cases that means agents working with our team. Sometimes it means working with other companies, but just trying to do the right thing and be kind.
The golden rule.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of wisdom, and
have some fun. Have some fun in the process. It is a hard business, a hard job, but if you have some fun, you work hard, the potential for agents in our industry is the income potential, everything is super high. For people that are willing to put forth the time and effort, there is a potentially huge upside.
Yeah. And to your point, it's been hard the last 2 years. I think everybody's been on edge emotionally, right?
Yeah.
COVID has really put people on edge, and I know there's been just a lot of probably headbutting in our business that probably wouldn't have taken place had we not gone through this pandemic. It's been an emotional time for buyers, sellers, and realtors.
Right.
It's been a tough 2 years for everybody. Right?
Yeah, absolutely, across the board.
So I think that's great advice.
Yeah. And I appreciate the podcast, what you're doing. And again, I just can't encourage consumers enough to really look at hiring a professional, real estate professional, both buying and list side, especially as the market goes along too.
Yeah, I think it's important for consumers to understand really what happens kind of behind the curtain, and you know how important it is to hire that professional, and really what we do and how hard we work, and you know what we bring to the transaction. So I think it's important. So I thank you for being here. Your wisdom and your knowledge is very, very helpful, and look forward to many more transactions with your team. You guys are great to work with. So.
Keep up the great work, my friend. Appreciate it. Love the podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Raw Real Estate Podcast. If you have any feedback for this episode or want to suggest a future topic or even possible guests, head to wadehansen.com. There you can get links to my Facebook and LinkedIn pages. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel to see the video version of this podcast too. Again, thank you for listening to the Raw Real Estate Podcast. We'll talk soon.